Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance, watching the stars through the main viewing screen. The ship had been exploring the outer edges of the Kepler 442 system for 3 weeks now. It was supposed to be a routine mission, to check for habitable planets and mineral resources. Nothing exciting ever happened on these deep space surveys. That changed when Lieutenant Amy Stone looked up from her sensor station with wide eyes. "Captain, I'm reading 12 large ships approaching our position. They're huge, sir. Each one is at least 3 times bigger than us." Jake felt his stomach drop. The Defiance was alone out here, far from any human colonies or military support. He had hoped that if they ever met alien life, it would be peaceful. The size of those ships suggested otherwise. "Put it on screen," he ordered. The viewing screen flickered and showed 12 massive ships moving toward them in perfect formation. They were dark gray with sharp edges and glowing red lights. They looked like they were built for war, not exploration. "Are they trying to communicate with us?" Jake asked. Tony Blake, the communications officer, shook his head. "Nothing yet, sir. But I'm picking up some kind of scanning beam. They're studying our ship." Jake turned to his tactical officer. "Lisa, what are our options if this goes bad?" "Commander." Lisa Parker checked her console. "Not good, sir. Our weapons are designed for defending against pirates and small threats. Those ships could destroy us easily if they wanted to." "Maybe they're friendly," suggested Ryan Bell, the chief engineer. "Just because they look scary doesn't mean they want to fight." Before Jake could respond, the communications console started beeping. Tony's hands flew over the controls as he tried to establish a clear signal. "I've got something, Captain. They're broadcasting on multiple frequencies. It's in English, sir." "English?" Jake was surprised. "How do they know our language?" "I think they've been listening to our transmissions for a while," Tony said. "The signal is coming through now." A deep, harsh voice filled the bridge. The accent was strange, like someone learning English from old recordings. "Human vessel, you will prepare for immediate surrender. I am War Marshal Kethfor of the Zephyrian Empire. Your species has been evaluated and found suitable for incorporation into our territory." Jake stepped forward. "This is Captain Morrison of the Earth ship Defiance. We come in peace and wish to establish friendly relations with your people." The alien laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Peace? Your species amuses me, human. We have studied your transmissions and learned about your physical capabilities. You are weak creatures who tire easily. Your endurance is pathetic compared to true warriors." Lisa whispered to Jake, "Sir, they seem to think they know everything about us already." Jake nodded and spoke into the communicator. "War Marshal Kethfor, there seems to be some misunderstanding. We don't want any trouble, but we won't surrender our ship or our freedom." "Misunderstanding?" Kethfor's voice became cold. "There is no misunderstanding. We have conquered 47 species across this galaxy. Each one believed they could resist us. Each one learned they were wrong. Your species shows promise as workers, but you lack the stamina for prolonged conflict. You will surrender now, or we will take your ship by force." Amy Stone looked up from her sensors. "Captain, they're powering up weapon systems. All 12 ships are targeting us." Jake felt the weight of command on his shoulders. The Defiance carried a crew of 200 people, all depending on his decisions. He could surrender and hope the aliens would be merciful, or he could fight and probably get everyone killed. "Sir?" Lisa asked quietly. "Your orders?" Jake thought about his crew, about Earth, about humanity's future among the stars. These aliens thought humans were weak and would give up easily. Maybe it was time to show them they were wrong. "All hands. This is the captain," he announced over the ship's intercom. "We are facing a hostile alien force that demands our surrender. They believe humans are too weak to fight them. I say we show them what humans are really made of. Battle stations. Alarms began sounding throughout the ship as the crew rushed to their combat positions. Jake had never been in a real space battle before, but he had trained for this moment his entire career. "Lisa, what's our tactical situation?" he asked. 12. Enemy dreadnoughts against our one explorer ship, she replied. Their ships are heavily armed and armored. But Captain, we do have some advantages. We're smaller and faster. We can move between those asteroids over there. Good thinking. Tony, send a message to the nearest human colonies. Tell them what's happening here. Already on it, sir, Tony replied. It will take 6 hours for the message to reach anyone, though. 6 hours, Jake repeated. That means we need to survive on our own until then. Ryan's voice came through the intercom from engineering. Captain, all systems are running at full power. We're ready for whatever comes next. War Marshal Cathver's voice returned to the bridge. Your refusal to surrender is noted, human. We will now demonstrate why 47 species have learned to fear the Zephyrian Empire. This battle will be over within 1 hour. Your ship will be destroyed, but some of your crew may survive to serve us. We'll see about that, Jake muttered. The first shots came without warning. Bright red energy beams lanced out from the Zephyrian ships, lighting up space around the Defiance. Lisa worked frantically at her controls, returning fire while trying to avoid the incoming attacks. Direct hit on their lead ship, she reported, but their shields absorbed most of the damage. Keep firing, Jake ordered. Amy, get us into that asteroid field. Use the rocks for cover. The Defiance dove toward the nearby asteroids, weaving between the floating rocks while enemy fire exploded around them. The ship shook with each near miss, but Jake's crew held their positions. Sir, they're not following us into the asteroids, Amy reported. They're staying in open space and firing from long range. That's because they think this will be over quickly, Jake said. They expect us to run out of power or give up soon. For the next 2 hours, the battle continued. The Defiance used the asteroids for protection, darting out to fire at the enemy ships before retreating to safety. The Zephyrian ships grew more frustrated as they failed to land a killing blow. Captain, Lisa said, I'm monitoring their communications. They seem confused. Their war marshal is asking why we haven't surrendered yet. How long have we been fighting? Jake asked. 4 hours, sir, Tony replied. Jake smiled grimly. 4 hours, and we're still here, still fighting. Maybe they don't know humans as well as they think they do. As the battle entered its 5th hour, something changed in the enemy's tactics. Their attacks became less coordinated, less precise. Jake noticed that some of their ships were firing more slowly than before. Lisa, are you seeing this? He asked. Yes, sir. It looks like they're getting tired. Their response times are getting slower. Jake felt a spark of hope. The aliens had expected a quick victory, but the humans were still fighting at full strength. Maybe, just maybe, they had a chance after all. The Defiance continued its deadly dance among the asteroids, and Jake began to understand something important about his enemy. They were used to quick battles and fast victories. They had never faced an opponent who simply refused to quit. 3 days had passed since the battle began, and Captain Jake Morrison was starting to understand something that War Marshal Cathvar clearly did not. The Zephyrians had expected the fight to be over in hours, not days. Now their confusion was obvious in every intercepted communication. Jake stood in the ship's mess hall, eating a quick meal while reading reports from his department heads. Around him, off-duty crew members grabbed food and rest before returning to their stations. His ship never stopped fighting, but the people inside, it worked in shifts. Captain, Lieutenant Jamie Foster approached with a tablet in her hands. I've got the new rotation schedule ready. Everyone gets 6 hours of sleep and 2 hours of personal time every day. The rest of the time, they're either working or fighting. Jake nodded as he reviewed the schedule. This is good work, Jamie. How's morale holding up? Better than expected, sir. The crew is angry about being attacked, and they want to show these aliens what humans can do. Nobody's talking about giving up. That was exactly what Jake wanted to hear. He finished his meal and headed back to the bridge, where Commander Lisa Parker was coordinating the ship's defenses. Status report, Jake said as he settled into his captain's chair. The enemy tried another major attack 2 hours ago, Lisa reported. We damaged 3 of their ships before they pulled back. But, Captain, I'm seeing something interesting in their attack patterns. What kind of something? Lisa pulled up a tactical display. Look at these time stamps. The Zephyrians attack hard for about 4 hours. Then they pull back for 2 hours. Then they attack again. It's like they need to rest between fights. Jake studied the pattern. You're right. It's like they can't sustain combat operations for extended periods. That's not all, sir. During their rest periods, we can see their ships powering down non-essential systems. They're actually taking breaks. This was fascinating. Jake had never thought about alien physiology affecting military tactics, but it made sense. Have you shared this information with the other department heads? Yes, sir. Dr. Rodriguez in medical is very interested. She thinks it might tell us something important about how these aliens function. Before Jake could respond, Tony Blake called out from his station. Captain, I'm receiving a transmission from the Zephyrian flagship. War Marshal Kethver wants to talk. Put him through. The alien's voice filled the bridge, but Jake noticed it sounded different than before. Tired, maybe even frustrated. Human Captain, this pointless resistance has continued long enough. Your ship should have been destroyed or surrendered by now. What trickery are you using? Jake smiled. No tricks, War Marshal. We're just fighting to defend ourselves. Impossible. Our intelligence reports show that human endurance is limited. You should be exhausted by now. Your crew should be begging for rest. Your intelligence is wrong, Jake replied. We're nowhere near exhausted. There was a long pause before Kethvar responded. You lie. No species can maintain combat operations for 72 hours without significant degradation in performance. We can, Jake said simply. And we will. The transmission ended abruptly. Jake turned to Lisa. 72 hours. Is that how long we've been fighting? Yes, sir. 3 full days of continuous combat operations. Amy Stone looked up from her sensor station. Captain, the enemy fleet is pulling back to a safe distance. It looks like they're resting again. Jake stood up and walked to the viewing screen. The Zephyrian ships were indeed withdrawing, their formation loose and somewhat disorganized. Lisa, I want you to do something for me. During their next rest period, I want us to attack them. Sir, they expect us to follow their pattern. Attack. Rest, attack, rest. But what if we don't rest? What if we keep fighting while they're trying to recover? Lisa's eyes lit up with understanding. We could hit them while they're vulnerable. Exactly. Jamie, adjust the duty rotations. I want weapons and navigation fully staffed during their rest periods. We're going to show them what continuous operations really mean. 2 hours later, while the Zephyrian fleet was powered down, and presumably resting, the Defiance struck. The small human ship emerged from the asteroid field like a predator, firing at the enemy's weakest points. The response was chaos. Zephyrian ships scrambled to power up their systems and return fire, but they were slow and uncoordinated. The Defiance managed to inflict serious damage on 2 ships before retreating back to the asteroids. Excellent work. Jake told his crew. Now let's see how they react to that. The reaction was immediate and angry. Kethver's voice crackled over the communication system. Cowardly humans, you attack during rest periods like scavengers. There are no rest periods in war, Jake replied. You're the ones who chose to fight us. Over the next several hours, the Zephyrians tried to maintain continuous combat operations to match the humans. But Jake could see the strain it was putting on them. Their attacks became less accurate, their formations sloppy, their timing off. Dr. Elena Rodriguez called the bridge from her medical bay. Captain, I've been analyzing the enemy ship movements and communication patterns. I think I understand. What's happening? Come up here and explain it to us, Jake said. A few minutes later, Dr. Rodriguez stood before the main screen with a collection of data charts. Captain, I believe the Zephyrians are physiologically different from humans in a crucial way. Look at these patterns. She pointed to a chart showing enemy activity levels over time. They operate in cycles. High intensity for short periods, followed by mandatory rest. It's similar to many predator species on Earth that rely on short bursts of maximum effort. And humans? Jake asked. Humans evolved as persistence hunters. We didn't need to be the fastest or strongest. We just needed to keep going longer than our prey. We can operate at moderate levels of intensity almost indefinitely. Lisa leaned forward. So while they need to rest, we can just keep fighting? Exactly. Their bodies and minds require recovery periods. Ours don't, at least not to the same extent. This explained everything Jake had observed. The Zephyrians weren't just tactically unprepared for a long fight. They were physically incapable of it. Doctor, how long do you think they can maintain this pace before it seriously affects their performance? Dr. Rodriguez consulted her notes. Based on what I've seen, they're already showing signs of fatigue. If they try to match our operational tempo for much longer, they'll start making serious mistakes. As if to prove her point, alarms suddenly sounded on the bridge. Captain, Amy called out. 3 Zephyrian ships just collided with each other while trying to form an attack formation. Jake watched the tactical display in amazement. 2 of the enemy ships were badly damaged and drifting, while the third was limping away from the collision site. They're getting sloppy, he said. Sir? Tony reported, I'm intercepting increased chatter between their ships. It sounds like they're arguing about tactics and making coordination errors. Jake nodded. They're tired, confused, and frustrated. They expected an easy victory, and instead, they're trapped in exactly the kind of fight they're worst at. Next few hours proved Dr. Rodriguez's theory correct. The Zephyrian attacks became increasingly disorganized. Ships fired at empty space, missed their intended targets, and failed to coordinate with their allies. Meanwhile, the Defiance continued its steady, methodical defense. Captain, Lisa said during a brief lull in the fighting, I've been thinking about our situation. We've been fighting for almost 4 days now, and we're still at full combat effectiveness. But they're falling apart. What's your point? Maybe we should consider going on the offensive. Not just hit-and-run attacks, but a real assault on their formation. Jake considered this. The Defiance was still outnumbered 12-1, but those 12 ships were no longer operating at peak efficiency. What did you have in mind? Their command ship is the largest one in the center of their formation. If we could damage or destroy it, the rest might lose coordination entirely. It was a risky plan, but Jake realized they had already proven something important. Humans could fight longer and harder than the Zephyrians had expected. Maybe it was time to press that advantage. All right, he decided, but we wait for the right moment, when they're at their most tired and confused. That moment came 6 hours later, when the Zephyrian fleet attempted another coordinated attack and failed spectacularly. Ships fired on their own allies, formation commands were ignored, and War Marshal Kethver's flagship found itself isolated from its escorts. Now, Jake ordered that the Defiance shot out of the asteroid field like a missile, heading straight for the enemy command ship. The battle was about to enter a new phase. 1 week had passed since the first shots were fired, and the battle had changed completely. What started as one human ship against 12 alien dreadnoughts had become something much larger. Help had arrived from human colonies throughout the sector, and now 15 human ships faced what remained of the Zephyrian fleet. Admiral Peter Collins stood on the bridge of his flagship, the USS Marathon, watching the tactical display. He had arrived 3 days ago to take command of the growing human fleet, and what he found amazed him. Captain Morrison and the crew of the Defiance had been fighting continuously for a week, and were still ready for more. "Admiral," reported Commander Kevin Wright from the USS Endurance, "the Zephyrian fleet is down to 8 operational ships. 3 were destroyed, and 1 suffered a complete systems failure from crew exhaustion." Admiral Collins nodded. The alien crew exhaustion was becoming a serious problem for the Zephyrians. Their warriors were making mistakes that would have been unthinkable at the start of the battle. "What's the status of our own forces?" "All ships reporting ready for combat, sir. Crews are rested and eager to continue the fight." This was the key difference, Collins realized. While the Zephyrian ships were falling apart from fatigue, the human fleet was actually getting stronger. Each new ship that arrived brought fresh crews and supplies, but more importantly, they brought the human approach to warfare. Captain Susan Hayes called in from the USS Relentless. "Admiral, I've got an interesting report from our intelligence team. We've been monitoring Zephyrian communications, and it seems they're having trouble back home too." "What kind of trouble?" "Their government is getting complaints from citizens who can't understand why this battle is taking so long. Apparently, every other species they've conquered surrendered within days. This is the longest war in their history." Collins smiled. Grimly, the Zephyrians had built their entire military strategy around quick victories. They had never planned for a war that lasted weeks or months. "Captain Hayes, I want you to coordinate with Captain Morrison. His crew has been fighting the longest, so they understand these aliens better than anyone." "Yes, sir." Collins walked over to the communication station. "Get me Captain Morrison on the Defiance." A moment later, Jake Morrison's tired but determined face appeared on the screen. The man had been in continuous combat for 7 days, but his eyes were still sharp and focused. "Admiral Collins, good to see reinforcements." "Captain, I've read your reports about Zephyrian battle patterns. Your observations have been extremely valuable. I want to implement a strategy based on what you've learned." Jake leaned forward. "What did you have in mind, sir?" "Continuous pressure. We never let them rest, never give them time to recover. We keep attacking in waves so that while some of our ships are resupplying, others are maintaining combat operations." "That should break them completely," Jake agreed. "They can't handle extended operations the way we can." Collins began issuing orders to the fleet. The human ships would attack in rotating groups of 3 or 4, ensuring that the Zephyrian fleet always faced active combat. When one group needed to rearm or refuel, another would take their place immediately. The new strategy was devastating. The Zephyrian ships found themselves under constant attack with no opportunity to rest or regroup. Their War Marshal Kethvar, who had been replaced twice due to exhaustion, was now War Marshal Kethaner, and he was already showing signs of straying. "Admiral," reported Lieutenant Colonel Maria Santos from her Marine unit aboard the Defiance, "we've boarded and captured one of their damaged ships. The crew was found sleeping at their stations. Half of them didn't even wake up when we came aboard." "What did you learn from the prisoners?" "They've never experienced anything like this, sir. In their language, there's no word for endurance. Warfare or war of attrition. Their entire military doctrine is based on overwhelming force applied quickly. This explained everything Collins had observed. The Zephyrians were like sprint runners trying to compete in a marathon. They had the speed and power for short distances, but they lacked the stamina for the long haul. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, who had transferred to the flagship to coordinate medical operations across the fleet, brought Collins her latest analysis. "Admiral, I've been studying the captured aliens and monitoring their fleet's performance. I believe we're seeing the breakdown of their entire command structure." "Explain." "Their species requires significant rest periods between periods of high activity. But more than that, their decision-making abilities deteriorate rapidly under sustained stress. They literally cannot think clearly after extended combat operations." Collins looked at the tactical display. The remaining Zephyrian ships were moving in erratic patterns, sometimes firing at empty space, sometimes ignoring human ships that were right in front of them. "How long before they collapse completely?" "If we maintain this pressure, I estimate another 72 hours at most." That evening, Collins held a conference with all his ship captains. On the main screen, he could see the faces of 15 experienced commanders, all of whom had watched the Zephyrian fleet deteriorate over the past week. "Ladies and gentlemen," Collins began, "we are witnessing something unique in galactic warfare. An entire enemy fleet is being defeated not by superior technology or numbers, but by superior endurance." Captain Morrison spoke up. "Admiral, my crew has been fighting these aliens for 7 days straight. We've learned that they think in terms of quick victories and fast surrenders. The idea of fighting for weeks or months is completely foreign to them." "That's our advantage," Collins agreed. "Every hour this battle continues, we get relatively stronger and they get relatively weaker. But I want to make sure everyone understands what we're doing here." He pulled up a star chart showing the local sector. "This isn't just about winning one battle. If we can prove that humans won't quit, that we can outlast any enemy, it will change how every species in the galaxy views humanity." Captain Hayes nodded. "Word of this battle is already spreading. Other alien governments are watching to see what happens." "Exactly. So we need to make sure they see humans as they really are. Not the weak, easily tired species the Zephyrians expected, but persistence hunters who never give up." The next phase of the battle proved Collins right. As the human fleet maintained continuous pressure, the Zephyrian ships began making increasingly desperate moves. 2 more ships collided while trying to retreat, and another simply powered down completely, its crew too exhausted to continue fighting. War Marshal Kethner attempted one last strategy. He ordered his remaining ships to spread out and attack human colonies directly, hoping to force the human fleet to divide its forces. But Collins had anticipated this move. "All ships, pursue and engage," he ordered. "Do not let them reach the colonies." The chase that followed lasted 18 hours. Human ships, operating in perfect coordination despite their extended combat operations, systematically hunted down the fleeing Zephyrian vessels. The aliens, exhausted and demoralized, were picked off one by one. When the USS Marathon finally cornered the Zephyrian flagship, Collins was surprised to receive a surrender request. "Human Admiral," came the tired voice of War Marshal Kethner, I request terms of surrender." Collins looked around his bridge. His crew had been fighting for days, but they were still alert and ready for more combat. The contrast with the defeated aliens was striking. "War Marshal, are you surrendering your remaining forces?" "Yes, we cannot continue. My warriors are beyond exhaustion. Our ships can barely function. We have never faced an enemy like humanity." "What did you expect when you attacked us?" There was a long pause. "We expected you to surrender after a few hours of fighting." Every other species we have encountered accepts defeat quickly, rather than endure prolonged conflict. You ... You are different. Collins nodded. Yes, we are. The question now is what happens next. We will withdraw from your territory and never return. We ask only that you allow our surviving crews to rest before beginning the journey home. Collins considered this. The human fleet had won a complete victory, but he realized this was about more than just military success. This was humanity's introduction to galactic politics, and how they handled victory would be just as important as how they had fought the battle. War Marshal, I'm willing to discuss terms. But first, I want you to understand something about humans. We didn't win this battle because we're stronger or smarter than you. We won because we never give up. Remember that. As the Zephyrian ships powered down their weapons and prepared for surrender negotiations, Collins reflected on what had just happened. Humanity had fought its first interstellar war and won it through sheer endurance. The galaxy was about to learn that humans were not just another species to be conquered. They were persistence hunters, and they would never stop fighting for their freedom. 3 weeks into what historians would later call the Battle of Kepler 442, the Zephyrian Empire faced a crisis that shook their government to its core. Emperor Zethkar stood in his throne room, reading reports that seemed impossible to believe. 47 species, he said to his military advisors. 47 species have surrendered to our forces within days of first contact. Yet these humans have been fighting for 3 weeks and show no signs of stopping. General Methdor, the Empire's highest-ranking military officer, shifted uncomfortably. Your Majesty, our intelligence about human capabilities appears to have been ... incomplete? Incomplete? The Emperor's voice rose dangerously. You told me humans were weak creatures with limited endurance. You said they would surrender quickly, like all the others. That was based on intercepted data transmissions and biological scans, the general replied. We observed their physical structure and assumed their combat capabilities matched their apparent limitations. The Emperor gestured to a large screen showing the ongoing battle. Does that look like limited capabilities to you? On the screen, human ships moved in perfect coordination, maintaining constant pressure on the Zephyrian fleet. The aliens could see that while some human vessels withdrew to resupply, others immediately took their place, ensuring continuous combat operations. Your Majesty, reported Admiral Vethzan, we have lost over half our ships in the Kepler system. The survivors are requesting immediate reinforcement or permission to withdraw. Withdrawal? The Emperor's eyes blazed. The Zephyrian Empire does not withdraw from inferior species. Send the Third Fleet to end this embarrassment. Meanwhile, in the Kepler system, the human fleet had grown to over 30 ships as more colonies sent support. Admiral Collins now commanded the largest human military force ever assembled, and morale had never been higher. Admiral, reported Captain Morrison from the Defiance, we're intercepting communications from the Zephyrian home worlds. It sounds like they're sending massive reinforcements. Collins studied the intelligence reports. How massive? At least 60 ships, sir. Maybe more. They're calling it their Third Fleet. Collins felt a moment of concern. 30 human ships against 60 fresh Zephyrian vessels would be a serious challenge. But then he looked at his tactical display and smiled. The original Zephyrian fleet had numbered 12 ships. Now only 3 were still operational, and those were barely functioning. Captain Morrison, in your opinion, how would fresh Zephyrian forces perform against us? Jake Morrison had been thinking about this question for days. Admiral, based on what we've learned, I think they'll make the same mistakes as the first fleet. They'll expect quick results and get frustrated when we don't give up. My thoughts exactly. But we need to be ready for a much larger battle. Collins called a meeting with his senior commanders. The main conference room of the USS Marathon was packed with captains who had been fighting almost continuously for 3 weeks. Yet every face showed determination and readiness for more combat. "Ladies and gentlemen," Collins began, "we're about to face the largest space battle in human history. Intelligence suggests the Zephyrians are sending their entire Third Fleet against us." Captain Hayes from the USS Relentless raised her hand. "Admiral, are we expecting any additional human reinforcements?" "Some, but not enough to match their numbers. We'll be facing odds of roughly 2 to 1. A murmur went through the room, but Collins noticed it wasn't fear. It was anticipation. However, Collins continued, "We have several advantages. First, we've been fighting their forces for 3 weeks and understand their tactics. Second, we've proven that we can maintain combat operations far longer than they can. And third, they're coming to us." Commander Wright from the USS Endurance leaned forward. "What's the tactical plan, sir?" Collins activated a holographic display showing the Kepler system. "We're going to use the same strategy that's worked so far, but on a larger scale. Continuous pressure, rotating attacks, no rest for the enemy." "What about our crews?" asked Captain Lisa Parker, who now commanded her own ship, the USS Tenacity. 3 weeks of fighting has been manageable, but a larger battle might push us to our limits." "That's a valid concern," Collins acknowledged. "But remember, we've been fighting in shifts and rotations. Most of our crew members have been getting regular rest. The Zephyrians haven't." Dr. Rodriguez, who had been studying alien physiology throughout the battle, stood up. "Admiral, if I may add something, the fresh Zephyrian forces will initially be at peak performance, but they'll deteriorate much faster than we will. Once they realize this isn't going to be a quick victory, their effectiveness will drop rapidly." "How rapidly?" Collins asked. "Based on our observations, I estimate they'll start making serious mistakes within 24 to 48 hours of continuous combat." Collins nodded. "That matches our experience with the First Fleet. The key is to survive their initial assault and then grind them down." The Third Fleet arrived 2 days later, and the sight was intimidating even to experienced human commanders. 60 massive Zephyrian warships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with fresh armor and fully charged weapons. War Marshal Hethfor, commanding the Third Fleet, immediately broadcast a message to the human forces. "Humans, you have embarrassed the Empire long enough. Surrender now, and some of you may survive to serve as workers. Continue this futile resistance, and you will all be destroyed." Admiral Collins replied personally, "War Marshal, you're making the same mistake your predecessors made. You think this will be quick and easy. You're wrong. Impossible. Fresh warriors against tired enemies. Your defeat is inevitable. We'll see about that." The battle began at dawn, ship time. The Zephyrian Third Fleet attacked with overwhelming force, focusing all 60 ships on the human formation. The intensity was far greater than anything the humans had faced before. "Multiple hull breaches on the Endurance," reported the damage control officer. "USS Defiance is taking heavy fire." Collins watched the tactical display as his ships maneuvered desperately to avoid the concentrated alien fire. 2 human ships were severely damaged in the first hour, but they continued fighting. "Admiral," called Captain Morrison, "they're not holding anything back. They're using everything they have right from the start." "Good," Collins replied. "That means they'll burn out faster." The Admiral's prediction proved correct. After 6 hours of maximum intensity combat, the Zephyrian attack began to lose coordination. Ships that had been firing in perfect synchronization started missing their timing. Formation movements became sloppy. "Now we implement the rotation strategy," Collins ordered. The human fleet split into 3 groups. While one group engaged the enemy directly, the other two withdrew to repair damage and rest their crews. Every 4 hours, the groups rotated positions, ensuring that fresh human forces always faced increasingly tired Zephyrian warriors, got by the end of the first day. The difference was obvious. The human ships moved with precision and purpose, while the Zephyrian fleet was becoming increasingly disorganized. War Marshal HFY found himself dealing with problems he had never encountered before. "Marshal," reported one of his ship captains, "my crew is requesting rest time. They've been at battle stations for 18 hours. "Denied," HFY replied. "The humans are not resting. Neither can we." But the humans were resting, in shifts and rotations that kept their overall combat effectiveness high while allowing individual crew members to recover. The Zephyrians, not understanding this concept, were trying to match human endurance with brute force. The second day of fighting was even worse for the aliens. Ships began making critical errors, firing on their own allies, missing easy targets, and failing to execute basic maneuvers. 3 Zephyrian ships collided with each other while attempting a formation change, and another simply drifted out of the battle zone with its crew apparently unconscious at their posts. "Marshal," his tactical officer reported with exhaustion, clear in his voice, "we've lost 12 ships to combat damage and crew fatigue. The humans have lost only 2. War Marshal HFY stared at the tactical display in disbelief. His force of 60 ships was being systematically destroyed by 30 human vessels that refused to behave like any enemy he had ever faced. "How long have they been fighting?" he asked. "The humans? 3 weeks and 2 days, Marshal." "Impossible. No species can maintain combat effectiveness for that long." "Apparently humans can, sir." On the human side, Admiral Collins was coordinating what he now called persistence warfare. His ships attacked in carefully planned waves, ensuring that the enemy never had a moment to recover while his own forces remained fresh through rotation. "Admiral," reported Captain Morrison, "the alien fleet is starting to break apart. Several of their ships are falling behind the main formation, and they're not responding to coordination signals." Collins nodded. "They're reaching their breaking point. Dr. Rodriguez, how much longer do you think they can maintain this pace?" "Not much longer, sir. I'm monitoring their communications, and it's clear that many crews are beyond exhaustion. Some are falling asleep at their stations, despite being under fire. And it's time to increase the pressure." Collins ordered all available human ships to attack simultaneously. Instead of the rotating wave tactics they had been using, every human vessel engaged the N. 6 weeks after Captain Jake Morrison first encountered the Zephyrian Empire, the longest continuous space battle in galactic history was finally coming to an end. What had started as 12 alien ships attacking one human explorer had become a conflict that changed how the entire galaxy viewed humanity. Admiral Collins stood on the bridge of the USS Marathon, watching as the last Zephyrian ships prepared to leave the Kepler system. Around him, his crew worked with the same steady efficiency they had maintained throughout the battle. After 6 weeks of fighting, they were tired but not defeated, worn but not broken. "Admiral," reported Captain Morrison from the Defiance, "all Zephyrian vessels have powered down their weapons and are requesting safe passage out of the system." Collins nodded. The USS Defiance, the ship that had started this whole conflict, was still fighting after 6 weeks. Her crew had become legends throughout human space, proof that humans could endure anything. "Grant their request, Captain. The war is over." But even as he said it, Collins knew that this was really just the beginning. Word of the Battle of Kepler 442 had spread throughout the galaxy. Other alien civilizations were watching, learning, and making their own decisions about how to deal with humanity. The human fleet now numbered 43 ships, with more arriving every day as colonies sent support. What impressed Collins most was not the number of ships, but the attitude of their crews. Every human who had joined the battle understood what they were fighting for, the right to exist as free beings in a galaxy full of predators. "Sir," called Lieutenant Amy Stone, still serving on the bridge of the Defiance after 6 weeks of combat. "We're receiving a transmission from Earth. It's from the President." Collins accepted the communication. President Martinez appeared on screen, her face showing a mixture of pride and amazement. "Admiral Collins, Captain Morrison, and all the brave crews of the Kepler fleet. On behalf of all humanity, I want to thank you for what you've accomplished. You've not only defended our colonies, but you've established humanity's place in the galaxy." "Thank you, Madam President," Collins replied. "But the credit belongs to every person who refused to give up. This victory belongs to all of humanity. Admiral, I'm sure you're aware that representatives from dozens of alien governments have been requesting meetings with Earth. The Battle of Kepler 442 has made quite an impression." Collins smiled. "I imagine it has. 6 weeks of continuous fighting tends to get people's attention." President Martinez nodded. "Some are offering trade agreements. Others are proposing military alliances. And a few are asking for assurances that humanity won't use this persistence warfare against them." "What are you telling them, Madam President?" "The truth. That humans are peaceful by nature, but we will never surrender our freedom to anyone. We don't start fights, but we finish them." After the call ended, Collins walked through his ship, visiting the various departments and talking with his crew. In engineering, Chief Ryan Bell was already working on improvements to their systems based on lessons learned during the battle. "Admiral," Ryan said, 6 weeks of continuous operations taught us a lot about equipment endurance. I've got ideas for modifications that will let our ships fight even longer without maintenance." In the medical bay, Dr. Rodriguez was treating crew members who had been injured during the fighting. But she was also compiling her research on human versus alien physiology. "Admiral," she reported, "I've documented everything we learned about Zephyrian biology and tactics. This information could be vital if we ever face them again, or if we encounter similar species." "Do you think we will encounter similar species?" Dr. Rodriguez considered the question. "Almost certainly. The galaxy is full of predator species that rely on quick victories. They're all going to have the same weakness the Zephyrians had." "And what weakness is that?" "They don't understand persistence. They think in terms of overwhelming force applied quickly, not steady pressure applied continuously. Humans are the opposite." Collins continued his tour, visiting the weapons department where Chief Petty Officer Amy Stone was analyzing battle data with her team. "Admiral," she reported, "we've identified several improvements to our tactical doctrine. The key is maintaining steady pressure while rotating our forces to stay fresh." "What are you calling this new doctrine?" "Persistence warfare, sir. It's based on the idea that humans can outlast almost any opponent if we're smart about how we fight." That evening, Collins held a final meeting with all his ship captains. The main conference room was crowded with officers who had been fighting together for 6 weeks and had formed bonds that would last their entire careers. "Ladies and gentlemen," Collins began, "we've just fought and won humanity's first interstellar war. But more than that, we've established a principle that will guide human military doctrine for generations to come." Captain Hayes from the USS Relentless raised her hand. "What principle is that, sir?" "That humans never quit. No matter how long a fight takes, no matter how difficult it becomes, we keep going until we win." Captain Morrison nodded. "The Zephyrians expected us to surrender after a few hours. Instead, we fought for 6 weeks and could have kept fighting for 6 more if necessary." "Exactly," Collins agreed. "And now every species in the galaxy knows that about us. Some will see it as a threat, others as an opportunity for alliance, but all of them will respect it. Commander Wright from the USS Endurance leaned forward. "Admiral, what happens now? Do we stay here or return to our home systems?" "Most of the fleet will return home," Collins replied. "But we're establishing a permanent base in the Kepler system. This will be humanity's first military outpost outside our home territory." "And the Zephyrian Empire?" "According to our intelligence, they're having serious internal problems. It seems that losing to an inferior species has damaged their reputation with their own people. Several of their subject species are demanding independence." Dr. Rodriguez spoke up. "Admiral, I've been monitoring Zephyrian communications. They're calling humans a species that never stops fighting. It's become a warning they share with other alien governments." Collins smiled. "Good. Let them warn each other. Maybe it will prevent future conflicts." The next morning, as most of the human fleet prepared to return home, Collins stood on the observation deck of the USS Marathon with Captain Morrison. They watched the stars and reflected on what they had accomplished. "Captain, when you first encountered the Zephyrian fleet 6 weeks ago, did you ever imagine it would lead to this?" Jake Morrison shook his head. "Never, sir. I thought we were going to be destroyed in the first few hours. I had no idea that human endurance would be such an advantage. None of us did. But that's what makes humans special, isn't it? We don't know our own limits because we refuse to accept them." "Admiral, do you think this changes everything for humanity?" Collins considered the question while watching human ships begin their journey home. Each vessel carried crews who had proven that humans could fight longer and harder than any enemy expected. "Yes, Captain, I think it changes everything. We're no longer just another species trying to survive in a dangerous galaxy. We're the species that doesn't know how to quit." As news of the victory spread throughout human space, recruitment centers were flooded with volunteers wanting to join the military. Young people who had heard stories of the 6-week battle wanted to prove they had the same persistence as the crews at Kepler-442. But more importantly, humanity's reputation spread throughout the galaxy. Trade negotiations became easier when alien governments knew that humans would never give up on a deal. Diplomatic discussions were more respectful when everyone understood that humans couldn't be intimidated. The Zephyrian Empire, meanwhile, faced a crisis that would eventually lead to its collapse. Species that had been conquered decades ago began to rebel, inspired by the human example. If humans could resist the mighty Zephyrian fleet for 6 weeks, maybe other species could fight for their freedom too. Within a year, 17 former Zephyrian colonies had declared independence. The empire that had once seemed invincible crumbled, as its subject peoples realized they didn't have to accept defeat. And at the center of it all was a simple truth that humanity had demonstrated at the Battle of Kepler-442. Some species can be conquered quickly, but others will fight forever rather than surrender their freedom. Captain Morrison, now promoted to Admiral and commanding the new Kepler Defense Force, often thought about War Marshal Kethver's final words to him. The alien commander had said humans fight like they have no off switch. Morrison realized that was exactly right. Humans didn't have an off switch when it came to fighting for their freedom. They would keep going, keep resisting, keep fighting, until they won, or until there was nothing left to fight with. And now the entire galaxy knew it. The stars that had once seemed full of threats now seemed full of possibilities. Humanity had earned its place among the great powers of the galaxy, not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through the simple refusal to give up. As Admiral Morrison often told new recruits at the Kepler Defense Force Academy, "We didn't win because we were stronger or smarter than our enemies. We won because when they got tired, we kept fighting. When they wanted to rest, we kept going. When they thought the battle was over, we proved them wrong. Remember that." He